To many people, discussing environmental cleanup waste can be a complicated topic. Here's a quick guide to help understand the subject. The Department of Energy, or DOE, is tasked with removing hundreds of buildings in Oak Ridge. These vacant buildings are deteriorating and many of them have contamination. Tearing down these structures generates a lot of waste. What type and where does it go? Let's start by defining a couple of terms. First is volume. Volume conveys the amount of waste. We usually measure volume in cubic yards. A cubic yard occupies space equal to the size of a cube, measuring 1 yard in length, width, and height. Second, we measure waste based on its contents. We take special care to know what's in the waste, specifically if it contains radioactivity. Radioactivity is measured in units known as curies. More curies means higher radioactivity. DOE has very strict guidelines about where it can dispose certain waste. These guidelines are known as waste acceptance criteria. For example, the criteria in Oak Ridge prevents the disposal of many types and forms of waste. Waste with high radioactivity is shipped out of state to special designated disposal areas. These areas are in remote locations far from residents and groundwater. What type of waste is shipped away? Before demolition begins on these buildings, crews go inside to remove all major hazards. They remove everything from stored chemicals to old contaminated equipment. DOE is also working to remove other waste streams of highly radioactive waste that are currently stored in Oak Ridge, such as transuranic waste and the site's inventory of uranium-233. These waste streams comprise a much smaller portion of the total overall volume, but they account for nearly all of the radioactivity. In fact, approximately 99.2% of the total radioactivity is being shipped to disposal sites out of the state. So what type of waste is disposed on site? Most of Oak Ridge's waste is generated from massive demolition projects. The rubble contains little to no contamination, and it is comprised mostly of steel, concrete, and soil. Approximately 92% of the total volume of waste is disposed on site. While it's much larger in size, it accounts for less than 1% of the radioactivity. Evidence shows that the most effective approach involves having multiple disposal options, both on-site and off-site. DOE uses an on-site disposal facility in Oak Ridge for the large volume of very low-level radioactive waste. This approach allows DOE to dedicate more taxpayer dollars towards eliminating the site's greatest remaining risks, instead of using a large percentage of its budget to ship the debris. To date, DOE has directed an additional $500 million towards accelerating environmental cleanup in Oak Ridge by having an on-site disposal facility. In the years ahead, the agency anticipates on-site disposal will provide another $700 million to focus on advancing cleanup rather than shipping. This approach has enabled Oak Ridge to become the first site in the world to tear down all of its gaseous diffusion uranium enrichment buildings, and next year, Oak Ridge will be the first in the world to complete cleanup of an entire enrichment complex. It's important to note that off-site disposal remains a crucial element of Oak Ridge's cleanup strategy. While the volume shipped off-site is much smaller, it allows DOE to eliminate the most hazardous waste, including nearly all of the radioactivity. Utilizing a safe, strict, multifaceted disposal approach, DOE is making tremendous progress eliminating the site's hazards and risks. DOE's projects are enhancing safety, paving the way for new economic development, and enabling modernization at some of the nation's most important national security and scientific research sites. That's a future Oak Ridge can be proud of.